Hi, I'm nervous, and today's video is a little unexpected, but I had to talk about this. Yesterday, as of recording this, Rytoast uploaded an episode of their podcast featuring the Oof Troop, and they talked about FNAF World and the Entity, among some other things. Very serendipitous because I am over 1,000 words into a script about FNAF World and its relation to the new games. And if you're new here, one of my very first theories on this channel was about MXES / the Entity. So I'm just excited to show you how the Oof Troop specifically seems to align with a lot of my thinking and also is connecting it to FNAF World. Basically what I'm saying is the Oof Troop has been able to do the amount of research into FNAF World that I have not been able to do as of late. I had planned on doing more research about FNAF World, but life happened, things got in the way, it's been delayed, and this I thought was a great way to kind of get some of my thoughts out. Maybe this will help me brainstorm. It certainly made me feel a lot better about the video I've been working on. Please go watch the full podcast. It's on Rytoast's channel. It's called Is FNAF World the Secret to Modern FNAF? So basically what we are doing today is not a traditional reaction because I've already seen this and I'm not going to go through the entire video again. I'm just going to start around 30 minutes in where it starts to become pertinent to the things that I've talked about or I have been wanting to talk about. The theory is still under construction. I've seen this happen to myself multiple times where I'm working on something, but before I can get it out or I get unconfident in it, so I put it on the back burner. Then I see somebody else with a much larger following start to talk about it, and I'm like, you could have just talked about it. Just a reminder to make sure you subscribe to become a member of the nervous system, like the video if you find yourself enjoying it, and leave your thoughts in the comments below.
Because I think Princess Quest and maybe the video game kind of realm that it embodies, assuming we might get more like it in the future, might be kind of the deepest subtunnel of the real world, of the FNAF surface. If that
I
makes
could
sense.
see that. A big theme in Tales especially has been that idea of is there a second consciousness within this digital space? Or if you die while within a digital space, does your consciousness remain? That's been a big theme in a lot of these stories. And I think tying that to Happiest Day and Princess Quest, I think there's a lot of merit to that conversation.
And I also made a very crude diagram of how I think the flip side works.
Let's go.
I'll send you.
I love a diagram. Let's go. I love your Freddy at the top. He's so charming. My guy really said,
make sure this is in the video version of
I
the
will.
podcast.
My guy really said, okay. So walk me through, because I can see some of this, but walk me through this.
Yeah. So we'll start at the bottom, where FNAF World is, because that has a clearly defined showcase of how the flip side and subtunnels work.
Okay.
So at the bottom we have FNAF World, and then you go a layer down, or in this diagram up, and you're in the more abstract, blue, monochrome, area with pixelated Freddy and the trees. You go down another layer, and you have just a barely recognizable white Freddy head.
Yeah, the tube.
Crawling through the forest at this point. Go down again, you get to the red lake with Old Man Consequences. And that seems to be the middle point.
This is a very interesting observation because they are going to go on to talk about it more, but my theory's premise is, why does FNAF World feel so important? And obviously, one of the main points that we agree on is that Old Man Consequences exists in Princess Quest, in our new games, and is also in FNAF World, obviously. The old man that we see in Princess Quest is never outright named Old Man Consequences or called Old Man Consequences, but he is called OMC in the files, and he's a red old man. He seems kind of he's got this wise, greater knowledge that we don't have. So I think it's really fascinating to see Oof Troop put this at the midpoint. I think Old Man Consequences is the strongest connection between the two. That is, I would say, undeniable. I'm sure there are people who deny it, but to me, undeniably, a part of both worlds. And thus, Princess Quest seems connected to FNAF World in some way. And you can see how they have it that the final layer of FNAF World leads to that first layer that is Princess Quest.
Okay.
Because we see Old Man Consequences like kind of being the end point in like both realms, it seems like.
Yeah.
It's hard to say because Ultimate Custom Night, I'm not sure like where that would be. Because I feel like
it
it's
is
got
kind
to
of
be
instant.
like, yeah.
And we're already not in reality anyway, right?
Yeah,
we're
like,
in that
it's not in
mental
reality.
agony space.
Yeah, it's not reality, but it reflects like how reality looks much more than FNAF World does.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell, like, is this like a stylistic thing where it's just like sometimes it takes on different forms, or is it a distinct difference? But either way, you get to the red lake, you go through it, and that seems to be how you cross into the flip. Because like at the bottom, it's like, oh, something's gone wrong on the flip side, Fredbear says, referring to something in the real world, which is where the main FNAF games take place.
Yeah.
And vice versa, FNAF World would be the Surface World's flip side.
Okay.
And so in Ruin, I think the Vanny mask like lets you access like a subtunnel underneath, which is mostly still recognizable. And like, especially looking at like the original version of FNAF World when the overworld was still like the pixelated version before Scott updated it to be the 3D overworld because people complained.
You do kind of see where the bottom layer here, which is the top of FNAF World, is the furthest removed from our reality. And as you go deeper into FNAF World, you get closer to our reality. And that is why once you get to a certain point, things start being influenced in the real world. And so Princess Quest is even closer to that. Princess Quest is even more capable of manipulating things in the real world. And then the thing that is most capable of manipulating things in the real world, while also giving you a connection to FNAF World, if you will, is the Vanny mask and seeing MXES and things like that, the entity. So I think that's super interesting. I really, really like this interpretation. I just want that to be clear. It is different from the way that I was tackling FNAF World and Princess Quest's connection. I was looking at their connection through more of an evolution sense, that FNAF World evolved into Princess Quest over time. However, this I think makes more sense. It's just it's a lot of research that I simply haven't had the time to do. And that doesn't mean that if I'd done the research, I would have come to the same exact conclusion as the OOF Troop. I really don't know that. I, in a way, doubt it. There is something they say later that I think I may have ended up picking up on had I been able to do the research. But again, I've just been really, really busy. Haven't been able to. So I was just like, wow, this is like all of the things that I was trying to put together. I just feel really good about it. So this I really, really liked.
Yeah.
That felt like it was much more cohesive in terms of the subtunnels and not as stark a contrast as it is in Update 2. And so like in Ruin, you go into the AR world and it's mostly the same, but it's getting a little hazy. Like things like change. Some things are more restored. Some things are just like digitally rotting. Almost.
Yeah.
And you can go through glitched objects to warp to other places, which is like the main traversal mechanic in FNAF World is.
And that is that is a really big component of what I had written about in my Word document here. I suppose when the video comes out, you'll see the similarities because this is the first part of the script. But I do talk about, and they don't touch on this, how Tape Girl seems to understand that things happening within the game world are affecting things on the surface. Very similarly to the flip side references in FNAF World and how things that you're doing in here are affecting things out there. And one of the things that really sparked me wanting to make a theory about FNAF World is similar to what they're talking about, where Cassie goes through these sort of digital portals that lead her to different places. And how this theory of mine came about was I was watching FNAF play FNAF World, I kept noticing things that reminded me of Ruin and reminded me of the Help Wanted games, etc., right? A lot of things that reminded me of Princess Quest, and one of them was Cassie and the way that she travels through a sort of teleportation method, and how much that reminded me of the way that in FNAF World, how there are portals in FNAF World 2 that like take you to another place. I feel like I'm not well spoken enough today, but so when they brought that up in the podcast, I was just glad that it's not just me. And obviously it's never just you with things like this, I feel like, but I started to pay more attention, if that makes sense. Like where you start sort of passively watching something, I started very intently watching around this part.
Is the glitched objects leading you to the subtunnels, and you essentially teleport. And Cassie's like, oh, I went through this portal and now I'm in Superstar Daycare. And
I'm reminding myself, I think they even look similar. I could be wrong. Because in Ruin, it's that like white pixelated doorway. Okay, no, because in
the
FNAF World it's just like a square.
Doorway.
But it's pixelated. It's a pixelated doorway, and like FNAF World, it is kind of just a square, but that's still like pixelated larger thing.
And the pixelated doorway, glad you mentioned that. It looks really similar to the FNAF 3 minigame doors, the exits. Like it's the exact same, like just white color with the border around it. Which you could say like, oh, that's just circumstantial, but something to think about.
No, it's worthwhile to mention.
Yeah. And then there's also like locations, like the first one that comes to mind is the Secret Monty Shrine. The like environment around it, like the backdrop is near identical to the glitchy purple like backdrop in the Shadow Bonnie minigame in FNAF 3. If I had like thought of this 2 days ago, I would have like pulled up with like as many receipts as I possibly could.
And I kind of just love that this is a new thought for Oof Troop, something that I've been kind of working on for a little while. It's kind of validating as a theorist when you hear somebody else talk about a similar train of thought that they went down. They take a very different route than I have, mostly because I think my brain is so focused on themes that I lose sight of that more physical evidence side of things. Also because at the very least, I don't make time to spend hours of my day in the game really looking for things. I spend more time watching other people play the game. That may just be an issue of time constraints that I just have physically in my life, or a skill issue. You know? Could be one or the other. But when I hear myself say these things, I'm full of a lot of doubt. I start questioning if I'm putting pieces together because I know I need to make a video and not because they're strong evidence points. And I start to get really caught up on that. Whereas Oof Troop doesn't have any problem just saying things like with the FNAF 3 exit doors looking so similar to what Cassie has. You know, I think about that and I'm just like, but, you know, it's just with it. To me, I'm like, well, okay, that's that self-doubt that I haven't worked through yet. Where it's like, maybe it is just circumstantial, but like just add it in with everything else. And if everything together comes together to work, then, you know, people are going to appreciate having as much evidence as they possibly could. Even if they throw that out as circumstantial, something else might stick. Whereas for somebody else, that might be a really big sticking point that helps them be cool with the rest of what you're saying. Follow along, not fall off, if you will. So, super interesting. That's all.
We could.
I see what you mean. The order of the pixelation is different, but the color scheme is almost identical.
Yeah. It's very very just purple, glitchy. And then, of course, you have Shadow Bonnie chasing you around the whole time in Ruin. Saying entity is Shadow Bonnie, I feel like it's probably either someone would get it or they'll go, what are you, stupid?
like I see.
Saying anything about the entity gets that kind of reaction where it's either, oh yeah, that makes sense, or are you stupid?
And I agree with this because Rytoast has even said to me, I mean, in chat, not like, I've not been contacted privately. My theory about the entity is not one that they agree with. mostly because they don't think that my evidence was strong enough, which is fair. And I thought that was interesting because there were a lot of people who watched my theory and were like, whoa, this does make a lot of sense. But I still agreed that the evidence wasn't all there. We could call it more of a hunch based on some very rudimentary elements, but it's my story and I'm sticking to it. I don't know what else to say.
The entity is just such an odd character.
I think it makes a lot more sense with Help 1 and 2, because I think Princess Quest 4 kind of puts together all the pieces to kind of be like, hey,
I see where you're coming from.
And Rytos cuts Ooftroop off there, and I don't think there's any tea or shade involved with that. Sorry. Girly, you can't be there. You can sit here. You can sit here. Rytos cuts Ooftroop off there, but Ooftroop says, we become the entity. Which is my theory. Which is my second theory on my channel, and I'm just like, I feel cosmically noticed. Like, I don't feel like the Ooftroop went and watched my video and was convinced and continued to look for evidence after that, which would be possibly not as interesting. I think it is better for me if the Ooftroop came up with this idea entirely separate from me. You can't go on the table. I don't know what else to tell you. You can't. You simply cannot do what you want to do. But I feel cosmically noticed. Somebody else watched the Princess Quest 4 ending and saw what I saw. That we are making a deal to become the entity. And Rytos has counterpoints here. The Ooftroop's argument, to me, combined with the things that I've already said, or combined with the things that I've already thought, dang near solidifies for me that, like, my hunch was correct. I didn't have all the knowledge. I didn't have all of the pieces, but the premise is founded on truth.
And like,
I think my only hesitation,
like
I think my only other, really, like you were
Yeah,
about
go
to say,
ahead.
I think my only other hesitation would be the other ending of Help 1 and 2.
Yeah, which even before Help 1 and 2, I'm like, I thought that the entity was probably the one controlling MaskBot. Like, it interfaces with the staff bot and then, like, gives the mask to Cassie, and then it shows up later in the AR world.
Which is, again, was my rebuttal to people saying, like, but what about the MaskBot ending to happen? I'm like, they both happened. Both of them happened. In sequential order. You do the bad ending, and then you later go on to get the good ending.
So, yeah, the Help Trap ending is, like, the one thing that's, like, if we become the entity, why would that not be highlighted? But MaskBot is.
To me, and this is just my humble little opinion, it's not highlighted because they don't need it to be a mystery who MaskBot is. They want the entity to be a mystery for us to solve. They want MXES to remain mysterious. That's why. Like, it's as simple as that. They spell out the MaskBot thing so that that's all taken care of, so we don't spend a lot of time on that. The mystery is who is the entity. You know what I'm trying to say? The mystery is, what is that other ending about? There's no real mystery to the MaskBot ending. It seems fairly, sorry, Zeke is in my lap. You can see him. Look at him. He's 2. Bubby just turned 2. Didn't you? Didn't you just turn 2 years old? He's a cutie. To me, there's no mystery in who is MaskBot. Like, that's just the first thing that Cassie's dad did. Maybe that was even the first thing that got him stuck there. I don't know. To me, that's the thing. It's just that they don't want MaskBot to be a mystery. They don't want you to spend a lot of time trying to, like, think about that. They want you to be thinking about the other ending more. That's my take.
Another thing with Princess Quest, while I'm thinking about it, I feel like that kind of displays, like, again, like a subtunnel underneath the AR world. Because you're already in the AR world when you go into it. And then Princess slashes you, you have, like, the white pixelated, like, thing go, and then you're in Princess Quest.
Oh, that is true. That white pixelation is very similar to the Ruin portal. Like,
Yes.
1-to-1 almost.
Yes.
Interesting.
And the teleportation sounds, I think, I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're either really similar or they're the same as the entity's teleportation sounds.
And that is something that one of my commenters brought up that I didn't put in my video because I wasn't thinking about it, quite frankly. I wish I had. They made a comment response video where I included that comment because I was like, dude, what perfect evidence that I could have used that would have really strengthened my argument. But yes, you as the character in Help Wanted 2, when we start playing Princess Quest, move by, I mean, obviously everywhere you go in the VR world, you move through teleportation, but when you're playing Princess Quest, even before you're in there, like she's moving by teleportation, and then you get in there and you do the same thing. You teleport from place to place to place. That is the exact same way that the entity moves. He teleports. You don't see him fluidly move. It's like he's there, and then he's there, and he's there. You know what I'm trying to say? It's the same. I don't know. People are more than allowed to have their own opinion. And Raito's rebuttals here, they do, like, I'm like, that makes sense. There's still more, I think, that we, to prove it in a definitive way. And not have it just be a theory, because right now that's what it is. It's just my theory, and that's what I'm saying. It's like, I want people to get on board with my theory. I don't want people to accept it as fact. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not saying, well, this is objective fact, and the people who don't believe it are silly. But I'm saying, like, I would just love more people to get on board with this theory. It is now not mine alone, you know, but blah, 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 so on and so forth. I'm rambling. Let's go.
That I don't think I can pull up quickly, but I'm just going to believe you.
Yeah, that's something people watching can like fact check and kind of like analyze.
Let us
for
know
themselves.
in the comments.
I think I'm leaning toward it's similar, but not the exact same. And then like, of course, the main mechanic is you pick a spot, you teleport, and then you keep going. You go down and down and down, which I think is going down further into the sinkhole because like you see like the cracked floors and you like keep going.
To help follow along, Oof Troop is posing that the same trip we take in the Princess Quest 4 game is spatially the trip you would take to get from the top level of Security Breach down into the sinkhole to where the physical MXES machine lives. And I would really want to do like a full side-by-side sort of comparison to really drive that visual home. But as Oof Troop, you know, talks about it, and I get a mental picture in my head of the way we go down that, like, spiral staircase situation, and we, like, fall in. And the same way in Princess Quest, we kind of go down, like, broken stairs kind of thing in the castle and end up in the graveyard. It is so compelling and so satisfying, and I really, really love it.
Like, the way you go down is a lot like how you go down the sinkhole in Security Breach, where there's, like, broken platforms, like a staircase around the tangle. And then, of course, you get to the bottom office and burn traps there. And then in Help Wanted 2, that's where you get the glitch trap plushie and then hand it off to Vanny.
Not to mention the connection between the old man and old man consequences being at the bottom there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That and I don't know if Oof Troop talks about this in there. They also left a comment down here real quick. Forgot to mention that the scooper ending in Ruin also mirrors the clock ending in World, where the objective is to go out of your way to find hidden keys to subvert the path laid out to you. That is something that was in my theory that I am still writing. But the connection to Sister Location also exists there, where when we get all the way down in Ruin, Cassie has the option to go to this Sister Location-esque room with the scooper. That would be around the same area where we go into the Sister Location elevator at the end of Help Wanted 2. Genuinely, like, the Sister Location connection is right there. And FNAF World also ends with a direct link to Sister Location. I feel it. I see it. I see the through line.
That's another thing with Old Man Consequences. The only other time we've seen him depicted, supposedly, since it's not like confirmed that the Red Old Man is him, it's just very likely.
Just very probable. I'm not saying it's confirmed, but like
it feels that way.
we can sure agree that it is for now.
But like again with him and going back to the old man consequences, like silhouette. He's not depicted as any sort of animal. He's just an old man.
Yeah.
And I find that, like, very important. Back to, like, going down the sinkhole. What do you find, like, slightly lower than where you're, like, supposed to go? If you put in the plushies right, or light the torches for the memories right,
The
you
Bonnie
go down
mask, right?
and you find a Bonnie mask in a box under, supposedly, where the burn trap room would be. Assuming that this is, like, a deeper level of the sinkhole.
Right.
I'm thinking that if you open up that chest and the Bonnie mask gets inside, it's blue with purple splotches on it that you find in a box. I think that insinuates, hey, here's a new mask for me. And then you become the entity.
I love that. I think it ties in really well with the things that I said about MXES. Similarly, I pointed out these visual similarities between our player character and the entity. I did not go further. I could have gone further in researching my theory, but I was afraid the longer I spent on it that I would never put it out there. So, but this is like the next level, right? The MXES entity has a lot of visual similarities to what we would look like were we digitally transferred as Cassie's dad. With the rabbit mask, I also made that connection. I just think it makes so much sense. You heard it here first, folks. The Oof Troop agrees with me. I was so sure about this situation, but I felt like I did not have enough evidence for it. I feel like my evidence points are a lot looser than this. These are a lot more solid evidence points that come to the same conclusion, which to me furthers the argument that my little evidence points that I was finding were clues leading us to this conclusion. I wasn't getting the full big picture. I was just picking up these tiny little pieces, if that makes sense. So I was catching these little pieces, but I was not getting the full picture. And I feel like the Oof Troop has picked up on a lot more of full picture stuff that even connects to FNAF World, which is also something I've been obsessed with lately. So, very cool.
And then you become the entity within the MXES console. Because it's, like, right below the burn trap layer in Ruin.
Fair. Like, locationally, yes. I see that.
It's hard to say for sure because of how abstract it is.
Yeah.
And, like, saying, like, oh, it's a subtunnel, like, of the same pizzeria. You have to be on that track to even, like, consider that worthwhile.
Yeah.
But
no, I like that interpretation.
Hopefully it's, like, a through line people can understand.
And when the Oof Troop said that, I responded to my first comment with, oh, I do. Yeah, so basically it just feels like I was picking up on these little hints, but I wasn't getting the full-blown connections. I didn't play Ruin. I don't play these games. I just watch other people play them as much as I can. And sometimes that will just objectively prevent you from being able to pull everything together. It's a good, like, self-note that I can give myself permission to do these things. I just always feel like I'm not being productive when I do them, even though that feels silly.
Interesting. Yeah, because I've personally been opposed to Cassie's dad being the entity. I didn't think it needed to be. I didn't think it was necessary, because I think the entity just acting as an avatar of a MXES system works without Cassie's dad's involvement.
That to me is like Rytost's main rebuttal, and they said something similar to me. Really, Rytost's issue with my theory was that, one of my connections, was that our VR hands, like Cassie's dad's presumed VR hands, are blue and they cut off at the wrist. MXES's hands also do that. And their rebuttal to me was like, well, that's normal for, and I say this in my theory too, or I'm just like, it's super normal, right, for our hands to be cut off at the wrist and to be, like, you know, see-through and blue or whatever. It's a VR game. That's always the thing. And I was trying to make it very clear that I'm not saying, or that I wasn't saying in my theory that, ooh, look how special our hands are. It was, look how special MXES's entities' hands are. They're the same. That is the connection that I'm trying to make. Not that our hands are unique in that sense. That's very normal for VR. But that this entity seems to be born from a character existing in VR whose hands would look like that. And their argument was just that that wasn't strong enough, which is like valid. But I just wanted to take a second to clarify, because I can't know that Rytoast is necessarily talking about my theory when they say they've been opposed to that idea, but I just do know that we've had that very slight interaction. Whether Rytoast is talking about my interpretation of the entity here or not, it doesn't matter. But they say that there's no reason for the entity to be possessed or to be connected to a human character, which I understand because we know so little about Cassie's dad. I have headcanon about him, but nothing that has been necessarily proven in the course of gameplay. And until something in the games offers clues as to who Cassie's dad is as a person, and they go on to talk about this a little bit, I understand, but to me, and Rytos, if you're watching this, this is my rebuttal to your rebuttal. The reason it makes sense for Cassie's dad to inhabit the entity, even if that was not always the case, is because his daughter is in the pizzeria, the ruined Pizzaplex. And he knows that. And he feels a duty to protect her. And that is the entity's role in Ruin. Now, I've heard people say the entity's role in Ruin can't be to protect Cassie because it sends the animatronics over and they want to hurt Cassie. But to me, as far as Cassie's dad would understand, the animatronics have always been there to help. And the way the entity, whatever program would have been set up, it's to, oh, you're going somewhere you're not supposed to be. I'm going to lure an animatronic over here to help you get where you need to go. So to me, Cassie's dad's mission in Ruin is to get her out of the Pizzaplex. He knows she's going to a dangerous place. This is his only ability to help her. So while Raito says, like, it makes sense for the entity to be, like, just a security system outside, and I'm like, I get it, there's so much that is set up in Help Wanted 2 that suggests things are being put in place to try to protect Cassie. And that feels very specific to her. Roxy is her favorite. Roxy is the one that is the security node. We literally see Cassie's dad in Help Wanted 2 put that faceplate onto Roxy. To me, there's just enough there to set up, you know, he's letting her, trying his best to let her know some semblance of him is here and is trying to protect her and keep her away from the things that can hurt her. The reason that that fails is because of her strong sense of loyalty to Gregory. And that's what's so unfortunate about that entire ending, is that her dad is trying to help her and she doesn't listen. To me, that's like the other level of tragedy that exists between Ruin and Help Wanted 2 that I don't think is as powerful if it's just a security system. Does that mean it needs to be? Like, sure, no. But Glenrock Freddy doesn't need to be possessed by anybody either. It would just strengthen a lot of those story elements if it was a spirit attempting to gain some level of redemption. To me, that is a reason. It's to get you feeling extra about these characters. It's to make you connect more with them. It's like logic brain versus like feelings brain or whatever. Like, both matter in storytelling. Maybe not logically to get to an end, but it does matter to Steelwool that we connect with all of these characters. And I do appreciate Oof Troop calling back to the shadow animatronics, because in many theories, people have posed that these shadow animatronics are former employees who got spring locked or whatever and have only stayed around because they want to try to help in some way. The idea of the entity being, even if those others, even if the shadow animatronics were not canonically that in the past, it would be interesting to me to see Steelwool look at that and go like, ooh, what if that happened? And manifest that through the entity. That's just my 2 since, or maybe more than 2 cents. I feel like I talked for a long time. Let's keep going.
And I think it also plays into who is Cassie's dad, what is he like, and we don't know.
Yeah. No, for sure. Especially considering, like, if that Bonnie mask is also supposed to lead us towards the idea of him being the Bonnie bro from FNAF 4. But we still really don't know who that person is.
Yeah.
Even if that is true, like, even if that's confirmed, it's like, okay, great. Doesn't really tell us a lot about his character 50 years later.
Yeah, and that's kind of like a big problem I have right now with the whole Cassie's dad plot. Is like we have all these like clues to his existence and who he might be. We know nothing about the guy, and I don't know if we will.
I don't know. I think...
And that is almost the last thing I feel like I really want to say about this podcast episode is the fact that, you know, they point out that we don't really know a lot about Cassie's dad as an individual. The reason that struck me as interesting is because of this headcanon I've built up of Jeremy for so long. And maybe this just needs to be its own video. I really do believe that Cassie's dad is the Help Wanted 1's Jeremy at this juncture. And that he did survive the slice. The only thing that would get in the way of that is he does seem to get fired after that, and then he goes on to work at the mall, the Pizzaplex. If that was a demotion of sorts, rather than a full firing of like, okay, like you clearly can't be involved in this stuff anymore, but you could go work as a technician at the Pizzaplex. Even if he did have a face injury, if he's wearing the Vanny mask as a fast technician, that wouldn't ward anybody off, right? He'd just wear the mask and that would be fine. Basically what I'm saying is there's a through line that allows him to live and allows him to continue to work for Fazbear Entertainment under a different job title. I do see where the evidence is shaky. The issue is just that the callback, and I think they do pick up on this, the callback in Help Wanted 2 is to the Help Wanted 1 Jeremy. It doesn't call back to Jeremy Fitzgerald unless they're all the same, which would be complicated for other reasons. To me, the only other solution is that if that really isn't saying, remember Jeremy? Like, you are Jeremy, do you remember? It's saying, do you remember Jeremy? And he knew about Jeremy, which ties into my other theory that Jeremy was Gregory's dad. Jeremy bit it. And Gregory ended up getting close to Cassie and Cassie's dad because of that connection. And that Bonnie Bro isn't Jeremy. And that's not asking about remember Jeremy as in your name is Jeremy. It's remember Jeremy as in remember your friend Jeremy who died. And now you've been investigating that. But that's a lot. And I do understand all of that is a lot. But to me, that's kind of where my head has been with a lot of this. Cassie's dad is investigating the Pizzaplex. It's kind of like this thing where this family, you know, this kind of hodgepodge family is aware that something is going wrong at Freddy's and kind of all in their own way trying to investigate that. And it ends up leading to them all getting hurt in some way. And again, then it's like, why is the poppet the rabbit, right? Like, I get that that's confusing, right? I can't know that, but those are my like thoughts outside of Cassie's dad player character literally being Jeremy.
Because I've got a lot of thoughts on who he is, and I think that I've been saying for a while, I think he's Jeremy Fitzgerald, not Help Wanted Jeremy, FNAF 2 Jeremy.
I feel like it's probably the same guy.
I think it lines up, especially like if you consider the like FNAF movie lean that like Michael was helping William to an extent unwillingly for some amount of time. The idea of Cassie's dad, presumably Michael's friend Bonnie Bro, being roped into that until he is possibly bitten by 87, maybe, you know, if that's possibly a road you go down, I think that lines up. The thing I've seen a lot of people, I think ID's Fantasy also believes this, I could be wrong, not to put words in your mouth if you don't believe this, ID's. Cassie's dad is Help Wanted 1 Jeremy. I think Help Wanted 1 Jeremy's dead.
If IDs doesn't believe that, Rytos may very well be getting confused with some other people who might believe that.
I don't know what your thoughts on Help Wanted 1 Jeremy is.
I think he tanked it. Why not?
It's not unprecedented for a human in the FNAF universe to survive something like that.
And also, there's like nothing that says definitively like he died And
Yeah, it's
he's
never
not
said
coming
he
back from that.
died. They dance around the
They dance
idea of a
around
death.
the idea of it, but it's vague enough to where it's like you could bring him back. Still,
It wouldn't be bullshit.
Even referenced Help Wanted 1 in the achievements for Help Wanted 2, like with Remember Jeremy?
Yeah,
Very
which is like,
specifically.
what are you talking about? What does that mean?
And then
No,
like
I think
Ruin
that is
also
worthwhile.
in the Fazbear Theater, there's like some graffiti on the projector screen that says Jeremy with the pizza slice. Ruin is so FNAF World pilled. Like you have like the security system.
Just a warning, that is the cold open
storyteller.
now. Just warning you, that is going to be the cold open. That's just what I want you to know.
Oof Troops does say in that moment, like talking about the storyteller, and that was another really big piece of evidence for me. The storyteller is something that is used in FNAF World and in the Tales books. That was another connection that I had made to old and new FNAF connecting.
Yeah, and I talked about this a lot in the last one. I think like all the random like connections between Ruin and World, because there's like Pinwheel Circus and then like Fall Fest and Carnival, that whole thing. Mimic Ball, Mad Endo, Mimic. Another one I didn't consider then, I don't think, was Bubba, looking a lot like Dreadbear.
That basically wraps up. To be fair, there is a lot more in this podcast that I would love to sit here and talk about. It's just not relevant to my theories and things that I've been thinking about. They did spark my curiosity on a number of other topics that I think would be worth exploring. Seriously, watch this. It's good. They talk about Old Man Consequence maybe not being a crocodile, but in fact being a Foxy Bro mask. And that being the connection, that Old Man Consequences is actually Mike and not Henry, or not just some Old Man Consequences entity that is a crocodile. And I'd never questioned that being a crocodile before thinking about it, like the way that they were purporting it. They do mention it as if other people have made theories like this. I've not come across them. First and foremost, I think it's just really great to have somebody else out there who's fairly confidently, I would say, saying that the entity is who we become in Help Wanted 2, and then that carries over to Ruin. I think I did a good job here defending sort of the idea that it does make sense for Cassie's dad to go on to have that role in Help Wanted 2, and I think that part of the issue, and this might just be me, is that I've done the work in my head on my own to give Cassie's dad a character that is this father who seems to struggle to be present for his child. Cassie's dad, and the way that I've built him up in my head, reminds me of the dad from Mrs. Doubtfire prior to becoming the nanny, where he was not doing a good job of being a protector of Cassie. I don't really want to go into all of that, but just one really good example is the fact that she said the log ride was really fun, and it turned out the log ride was actually really dangerous for kids. Or for anybody, really. It was dangerous. The log flume ride was dangerous, but she rode it. There's a number of other instances throughout these games, these newer games, that sort of tell us that Cassie had to be an independent child a lot. And this role of becoming the protector of Cassie aligns really well with every other instance we've seen of a dad regretting not protecting their child from something bad that happened to them or that could have happened to them, etc., etc. To me, MXES entity as Cassie's dad does tell us a lot about Cassie's dad as a character, and there are other environmental storytelling elements that I think do tell us a lot about Cassie's dad as a character. And I don't know, I think maybe Rytoast is wanting those things to be a little more obvious or told to us a little more directly, where I think that Steel Wool has done a lot of environmental storytelling that is some, you have to really search for it. Again, I could be overly reading into the things that I'm seeing within the games and how that relates to Cassie's dad as a character, but that is my thought on the subject. And I think my Unlikely Heroes video also goes into that a fair bit. If you notice, a through line in a lot of my theories does come right back to Cassie's dad. A lot. a lot. So I don't know, I may just continue to explore that character. I clearly have an affinity for him in some way, shape, or form. But I really appreciated Oof Troop taking the time to talk about FNAF World and its connections to the new games. There's a lot there. I really hope I can get my theory out soon. Maybe what we can expect from me soon is another theory about Jeremy / Cassie's dad. Another theory you can expect from me soon is another one about Vanny and her stuff. I am working on the FNAF World script. It's just that I'm stuck, and hopefully the more that I digest the things that Oof Troop said here, I can kind of formulate my full thoughts on this situation. But there may just have to be a section of that video now dedicated to Oof Troop's theory itself. It might be a situation where it's like, oh, I don't have to solve that anymore because now I agree with what another theorist is saying. So that there might be a portion of the video. There's still a lot that Oof Troop doesn't go over in here that is a part of my theory that is more related to Princess Quest and what Princess Quest is, as well as some of the themes that we follow from FNAF World all the way through. One of them being about a dual identity character. So you are talking to two entities inhabiting one body of sorts within FNAF World, or at the there's a dual identity going on within one character, and we see that again with Helpy. I'm not articulating it very well right now, but there's a through line there that we have this like these dual identities, as well as Tape Girl. There's a lot about that with Tape Girl too, where we think we're listening to Tape Girl, but suddenly things switch and we're actually talking to Glitch Trap or listening to Glitch Trap. It'll be spelled out a lot better in the scripted video that I eventually make, hopefully. But that has been that. I'm sorry that this isn't well articulated. I don't know. I really, really do want to get back to regularly making scripted content. If you check in with the community tab, you know why I've just been a bit behind. But at the end of the day, I really do enjoy doing this. Hopefully my schedule will be back to normal soon. August is going to be a hectic week. Next week, I already know a video is going to be made. It's not going to be a FNAF video. It's going to be about Gooby. I hope you will join me. I really hope you'll join me. I really, really hope that even if you're not super into these other things, that you will humor me and come along for the ride, because I do think it's fun to talk about. I am genuinely asking you to broaden your horizon and allow videos like that to do a little bit better, because I do think that they're worth talking about. Look at it as a way to uplift some other creators who are doing some fun things in the world of analog horror and mascot horror. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like the video, subscribe, become a member of the nervous system, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you'd like to financially support the channel, I do offer $1 channel memberships. It's mostly just a way for you to financially support the channel, but I do post specifically to my community members. Sometimes I do polls, ask questions, talk about upcoming uploads, post pictures of my animals, but I'll leave that up to you. Whatever you do, however you choose to support the channel, I appreciate all of it. If you are a member of my channel, you saw you got a shout out at the beginning of this video. That's what I do for all of my channel members. I only have one tier. That's just the way that it is. If you are watching this the day that it was uploaded or this weekend, July 12th, 13th, and 14th, Vortex is doing their charity stream for rainforest conservation. I had planned on being a part of it, but due to some personal circumstances, I am no longer able to be a part of it. But there are still going to be a lot of other creators who will be there, including Siret Squawks and ID's Fantasy, etc., etc., etc. The list goes on and on. They are going to be playing a lot of different FNAF games, raising money for a very good charity. I talked about it on another video before. If you saw that, support them. I will leave it linked. I will try to make it the pinned comment, but I'll leave it linked in the description either way. I'm going to start live streaming again as soon as I can. I think next Wednesday will be the first one back officially, and we're going to be playing some more cozy games just while I get back into things, and to get us in the swing for when all of the new FNAF games are coming out, so that we can get them all as quickly as we can when they come out. I'll be back next week, but if you can't wait, there are videos on the screen right now just for you. Okay, bye!